Welcome back. This is Smarter Markets at IETA's North America Climate Summit 2025 in New York City. Joined here by Margaret Kim, CEO of Gold Standard. Thanks for joining us, Margaret.
Thank you for having me.
And, when we come to these conferences, it's such a great time to catch up and hear what everyone's been working on. So far, it sounds like there's a lot going on in the carbon markets. So I was hoping you could just start us off with, what are you currently working on at Gold Standard?
So we're currently working on three things: integrity, accessibility, and scalability. So integrity, not just on carbon projects or climate solutions, but across the entire value chain of carbon projects. So from the rule setting to high integrity monitoring, and all the way down to how corporates claim the benefit. Because the integrity can't just sit on the supply side. It has to be shared across the entire value chain, from all the way supply side all the way to the buyer side. So Gold Standard's been working on how do we evolve as a standard to align with science in order to keep up with that integrity stance, and also working with corporates to understand what is best practice. How do you claim an impact outcome, and how can you account for that in your value chain and beyond? So those are some of the work we do on integrity. Accessibility is quite challenging these days because we have the most fragmented market today. So there's not just voluntary carbon market, there's emerging compliance markets like the Article 6, CORSIA, the aviation market mechanism, as well as domestic markets where national governments are developing their own standards and frameworks. So the key for Gold Standard is how can we get ready? How can we help these projects to be ready to access various markets as the goalpost is changing on a daily basis? So how can we ensure that these projects can be financed to deliver real impact on the ground? And finally, scalability. I think this is sometimes often not prioritized in the conversations, because scalability is key in carbon markets. So what are some of the technology solutions we can use in order to scale that? And what are some of the innovative ideas, public and private partnerships that we can innovate and enable in order to scale the market? So those are the three things we're focused on.
And I'd love to dig in a little bit more to the accessibility piece, because it seems so important that we've got more compliance regimes appearing, country level, regional level. And you want these projects to be acceptable, compatible with these emerging compliance regulatory markets. What are the challenges and opportunities in doing that?
There are lots of opportunities and challenges. Obviously, the pure volume of changing regulations and new policies and frameworks, it's quite overwhelming to understand. I mean, I wake up to carbon markets and sleep to carbon markets, and yet it's quite complex every day, and 100+ countries trying to build their own system or own rules. We need to be on top of that. So while it's challenging, I do think this is a great opportunity for projects, because it actually now opens up to various markets that they can access to finance their projects. So I do find an important role for standards like us to enable that and make that process digitally enabled and as simple and streamlined as possible.
And when you think about the conference this year, what brought you here? What made you decide to come? I know you wake up and go to bed thinking about carbon markets, but what were you hoping to talk about at this conference with people?
One, purely selfishly speaking, I wanted to be inspired because I know there's action in the private sector. So I wanted to meet with our stakeholders and partners to understand what kind of progress they're making in the midst of all the geopolitical turmoil and challenges we face. So that's one. And second is, how do we bring the conversation from standard setting to implementation? Because we get quite stuck in the technocratic details of the standard setting. But what's really important is, are we actually entering into implementation, and are we thinking about scalable solutions to further progress on that implementation journey? So hopefully I'll have many of those conversations with our stakeholders.
And I know it's early in the conference when you and I are talking. Do you feel like we're making progress in the conversation relative to being stuck? Are we getting closer or making more progress on implementation?
I do want to be hopeful, because based on my conversations in the last 2 days have been all about implementation and progress. The challenge is, obviously there's a lot of companies that are hesitant to take action or even talk about it because of some of the circumstances they're in. But I do know for sure that companies are trying to move that needle and take ambitious action. So I think one of the things that civil society standard setters to really come together is, how do we enable that journey? Instead of looking at a snapshot of 2025 or 2026, but how can we recognize and acknowledge that journey that private sector companies are on?
And when you think about the journey that they're on, what do you think is the most important thing that you and the other standard setting organizations can do to facilitate that journey right now?
I think there is several things. Obviously, one is ensuring that integrity, so that we don't have layers and layers and layers, sort of another standard, trying to define that. So as a standard setting body, we need to uphold that integrity principles and values, and also safeguards. The second is not to lose sight of the benefits of these projects. So they're not just carbon projects. They're a holistic solution, often delivering adaptation resilience benefits and delivering nature preservation benefits, biodiversity benefits, and most importantly for the Global South, delivering sustainable development benefits, because it's all about growth and development. So I think not to lose sight of that across the value chain of carbon markets is going to be quite important.
And when you think ahead to the next year, what is, you think, the most important thing that we collectively, everyone who's involved in carbon and climate, what would be the most effective thing that we could accomplish over the next year to really make progress on the climate and advancing the effectiveness of carbon markets?
Two parts. One is making high integrity easy to achieve. So that will entail harmonization of the rules, alignment with fragmented markets, but also use of technology, how to mobilize digital MRV solutions to ensure that streamlines the process and also increases the transparency and credibility of those projects, and also demonstrating that and really highlighting the success. The second part is, I think one of the things that we get lost in, this is a very technocratic crowd as well. So how not to lose sight of that sustainable development impact these projects are delivering. So it's not just about 1,000-year permanence, but really about bringing improved livelihoods, creating jobs, improving health conditions of families. So to make sure that we can collectively demonstrate that success is going to be my hope for next year.
Well, thanks so much for sitting down with us. Really appreciate you taking some time to talk with us at IETA's North America Climate Summit 2025.
Thank you very much.